right, hello everybody. I am Staicha from Allfather-Metal, and I am joined here today by Zoë Federoff. Zoë is the singer of the symphonic cinematic metal band Catalyst Crime and the singer and keyboardist for Cradle of Filth since 2022. So, Zoë, it is such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
It is not a problem at all.
Awesome. All right, so as we were just talking about, I was lucky enough to review Screaming of the Valkyries. So I'm going to start with the question I am the most excited to ask you, and that is, what song on the album do you feel has the most Zoe influence?
Oh, wow. Well, there's no song that, there's so many different influences going on from all of us in the songs. They're all such weird bastard love children of the entire lineup, I suppose. But if there's one in particular, probably Malignant Perfection. Because all the keys hooks on that kind of all popped into my head the first day I joined the band, actually, and the first day I met my future husband. And this kind of melody was running through my head when I met him, and I ended up recording it later and giving it to the band, and it kind of morphed into Malignant Perfection later. So I probably Malignant Perfection.
You know what's amazing about that? Just you saying that that was when you met your husband. So when I reviewed it, I explicitly said that this has a gothic love song vibe. So that really, really comes true. It's and I mean I love the kind of Halloween element, and I really think guitars and keys are such a good and underused mix in metal because whenever, they collide like that, it's really, really powerful. So I'm so glad you said that one because yeah, the gothic love song vibe.
Well, there's this wonderful part in the chorus. My favorite part of the song is actually what my husband Ashok did because he wrote a lot of the guitar parts, but there's this one like counter melody the guitars are doing to the keys in the chorus that I think is just absolutely stunning, that just makes the chorus so much more impactful. So at the end of the day, he ended up adding what I think is the most crucial piece of what makes the song work.
That's amazing. And it is, all of the songs are so layered. I get why it's a difficult question, because every song has so much happening in it. Obviously, every person who's ever been in Cradle of Filth is very, very talented, but the songs are so layered. You have to listen to them multiple times before you can even start picking up every piece of the song because, you'll get swept away with the keys or with the vocals. And then you go back and you're like, oh, yeah, this is why this sounds so full. So that makes so much sense.
Oh, this is not easy listening. I mean, parts. Is metal ever really easy listening? But
Right?
I think this was great too because we mixed this album so differently compared to previous Cradle of Filth albums. For example, we have so much more bass going on in this mix too. So I feel like we really get a chance to hear what our bassist Dougal is doing so much more as opposed to previous albums as well. So there's so much going on. It's wonderful to have this new mix job as well, so you can hear more of those complexities.
Absolutely. Was there a reason you added? Because this to me does have, like a very dark vibe, this album. Do you feel like is that, what influenced wanting to bring out more of those like bass tones?
Well, I know that we all agreed collectively it should be a more guitar-driven album, kind of going back to the roots more with Cradle, because they've done
Yeah.
this trilogy of albums with these beautiful big symphonic sounds, which I love, don't get me wrong, but we all figured it was time to kind of refresh and go back to this more guitar-driven sound, and it ends up sounding quite a bit darker and heavier. And it ended up suiting, I think, the lyrics that Danny came up with quite well too, the screaming of the Valkyries. This is a screaming album on all levels, so.
I love that. That's amazing. So I did hear from our mutual friend, Lindsay Schoolcraft, that you were pretty heavily involved in the composing process for Screaming of the Valkyries. So as someone who has no idea what would be involved in that, can you just talk a little bit about what that was like for you?
Well, at first, I wasn't sure I was going to be allowed to collaborate because I come from such a different area of metal. As you mentioned, I front a symphonic metal band with, melodic death metal elements going on. So I wasn't sure that my ideas would be able to contribute to the songwriting sessions for this album. But to my surprise, my ideas were welcomed, they were accepted, they were built upon. There were long 12-hour Zoom calls going on with me and Donnie and Ashok. There's no, one song that's just one person's effort in terms of composition. It's always a process of we talk. During those Zoom sessions, they were literally 12 hours. We would be on Zoom all day long. Like my kid would wander in, like, "Mom, why are you still on the computer?" Well, we're trying to figure out what this drop down needs next. So it was really a lot of fun. I've never written over Zoom before in terms of compositions, but I think we're gonna end up doing it again with this album. It's way too much fun to be composing in real time with your buddies.
Yeah. And I mean, clearly the final product speaks for itself. So,
I think you can hear the friendship on this album. I know it's kind of
oh,
my pony of me and friendship is magic and stuff, but the friendship comes across on this album.
yeah. I mean, again, I think it's, yeah, all those layers and just how well they work together. Because this is the thing with Cradle of Filth. I've been listening for a very long time. And the thing, no matter what, because as you said, the albums they have, you've got some that have a little more, death and roll metal elements. You've got some that are a little more fantastical and have more of that gothic vibe to them, but they're all so rich and full. Like there's no dead space ever in them. So I imagine, yeah, it takes a lot to have everybody, merge together and be on the same page. I can't even imagine what the process must be like.
Well, if we ever decide to record one of these 12-hour Zoom calls for the curious fan, it's just 12 hours of just being nerds together. So that's what it's like. It's just being nerds together and deciding what we like.
A side hustle, the Patreon for that, I imagine people would come out just to listen.
I mean, maybe they'd also hear a lot of our terrible jokes and stuff, but
Even better, that's an upcharge. All right. So speaking of Catalyst Crime, I see that you have a new album coming out in 2025, meaning that you're going to be recording two major albums this year. So how are you feeling about the new Catalyst Crime album? What can fans expect from this one?
well, it's probably going to get pushed back more towards early next year just because the Cradle schedule is so packed towards the end of this year. And of course, I got to give proper space to both of my projects. But the Catalyst album's pretty much done. We're waiting on one guest spot to be recorded, and then we're finished. I've already done all my parts. It's definitely an evolution from our last album. We have our new guitarist, Shenna, who is absolutely phenomenal. And she brought these really cool modern melodic guitar lead sounds to it that I'm so excited for people to hear. I think she's an incredible writer and a great addition to the team. And her and Kaylin together has just been absolute magic. I mean, some of the stuff they came up with for this album just absolutely blew me away. So I'm really excited to share that. I'm excited to share what Catalyst is doing next. We have a great guest list for it, including Lindsay, by the way. So
Aw.
I think people are gonna find modern symphonic metal with again melodic death metal, prog metal, whatever we felt like throwing in there, really.
I love that. I can't wait to hear that. It's so nice when you can just like toss in those elements and guests are so good for that on an album. So
Well,
I cannot wait.
I'm blessed because both of my bands, both Catalyst Crime and Cradle of Filth, are not really inhibited by genre barriers. So that always makes it more fun.
That's such a good way to phrase that, the genre barriers. Yeah, absolutely. Just like freely exploring, other elements. That's amazing. Well, I'm very excited. And obviously, as I mentioned, you are one of the busiest people I must have ever looked into. Because on top of that, I did read that you have a daughter as well. So on top of, touring and composing, you also have mom duties. So very curious, does your daughter have any favorite bands? Has she shown any interest in the world of metal?
Yes, and because I didn't join one of her favorite bands, though, she has very little interest in what I'm doing right now. But that's okay. That's fine. When I first joined Cradle of Filth, I said, "Mom joined a newer band, a bigger band, so I'm going to be on the road more." And she said, "Is it Epica?" And I said, "No." And then she lost interest. So Epica is her favorite band in the genre for sure. She loves Epica. She loves Nightwish. She loves Camelot. She's into the symphonic metal stuff more. Although she is starting to get into the death metal stuff too, which is quite fun to have her go to school and try to explain to her classmates what death growls are. So I've gotten
You know
some.
what, though, we've all been there.
We have. I've gotten some teacher comments like, "Yeah, she's teaching her group how to death growl." And I'm like, it's fine. It's good for them. It'll be okay.
That's iconic. What a great thing to be doing in a grade school, I guess.
She's fun. She's a lot of fun. You say that I'm busy, but the truth is that parenting is just so much fun for me that I don't really consider it a job. So,
That's amazing. Well, I love that. And maybe one day we'll all get to hear her death growls. Clearly, she's developing the skills now.
well, let's see. She might end up. She wants to front a metal band someday. She says so. Let's see.
She's well set up for that, so that's amazing. All right. Now, the next question I have, I feel like you've probably been asked before, but who would you say was your biggest inspiration when you entered the world of metal?
Um, There were a couple of them actually, because pretty much when I entered metal, I was entering it through my dad's eyes because my dad was a metalhead and he got me into metal originally. When I was a kid, he handed me No Exit, Fate's Warning, Power Slave, Iron Maiden. But it wasn't until middle school, like around 12 or 13, that I discovered clean female vocals in metal. And that was life changing for me because before that, every time I saw a girl in metal, she was trying to be really masculine and one of the guys, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. Like we all love Lita Ford, Joan Jett, the rest of them. But the first bands that I came upon were Within Temptation and Nightwish. And in both of those bands, you had a decidedly feminine element, this feminine character that did not, in my opinion, ever detract from the heaviness of what made it metal, but rather complemented and upheld the heaviness of the music. So if the two female vocalists that I heard first were Tarja Turunen and Sharon Denadel. And to this day, like I still think everything that they put out is incredible. Our drummer Martin recently got my 1998 cassette copy of Oceanborn signed by Tarja because he was just on tour with her in another band. So that's wild. Holding Tarja's autograph on my cassette tape right there in my bag. That's wild. So those two came first for me, and then after that, I was lucky enough to get some training from Floor Jansen, who ended up becoming the permanent vocalist of Nightwish, and she's incredible. Like in terms of who I think of as my biggest inspiration for live shows, it's got to be her because her presence, her grace, her majesty. Oh my gosh, that woman's just insane in all ways. So I would say those would be the big three for me. Of course, also I listened to Epica, so Simone Simmons was another big one. Liv Christine, who of course was the original vocalist who recorded Nymphetamine, which makes it really weird to sing that because I'm like, I grew up listening to Liv Christine sing this, and now I'm singing it. What the hell? So that was a long answer, but there's a lot of inspiration and a lot of people I look up to in this genre.
It was such a good answer though, because I never thought about it. So when I was writing these questions for you, I had Within Temptation definitely in my mind, but I never really thought about why. But I agree so strongly. It's true. A lot of the female fronted metal bands that I grew up with were more masculine. It was more about like I can growl just as well. I can scream just as loud. And I do love that, but it's such a good point, like bringing that femininity and just adding it right in there and it doesn't detract from the heaviness. That's such a amazing point. I love that so much.
Women belong in this genre. Women belong
Oh
doing
yeah,
best. Some of us can growl like the boys. Some of us, we're the sirenic figures and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, women belong in metal, and any type of feminine influence in metal should be welcomed and appreciated.
absolutely. 100%. So you know what? I'm actually gonna circle back to my next question because what I wanted, this was gonna be a little bit later, but do you have any tips for women in the metal scene? Because obviously the fan base can sometimes be cruel. It can be a little bit toxic. I'm sure we all know that. I certainly do. And just, any advice you have on kind of how to handle that, especially, well, maintaining like your grace and poise, because it's got to be so much harder when you're a front-facing person.
You know, it's funny because we live in a world of contrast and dichotomies, and metal has this wonderful advantage of being able to play around with that, with the masculine and the feminine, the dark and the light, the heavy and the sweet. Because metal goes to such intensities in one direction, it would follow that you can celebrate the other directions it can go to as well. And for some of the fan base, I've definitely met people still around today in 2025 who are like, metal is a man's genre, this is music made for men. And it's like, this is not a world made for men. Nature is not designed just for men. There is nothing in the world designed just for one gender. That's not how it works. And you actually lose out on the heaviness and the intensity of what metal can be if you focus on just one side of it. Um, you know, short story. I know this is a long answer again, and I apologize.
Oh, I love it.
I think it was my second US tour with the band outside of a venue. I think it was like some security staff who were talking and saying, yeah, the new Cradle vocalist looks like they just stole her from a pop band or something. I bet she hasn't even listened to this kind of music. And I was just kind of like behind the bus trailer and I overheard this and I didn't say anything, but I was just thinking of, you have no fucking idea what I listen to. Like, I've been listening to metal since I was a kid. I've been going to metal shows since I was a kid. I probably can, name more bands and different subgenres than you can. So please shut the fuck up. Um, so my best advice for women is, be yourself and bring that energy. Bring the energy of who you are. And if people discount it simply because it's a feminine energy, well, then they're missing the whole point of metal and its extremes.
I love that. And also, please shut the fuck up. Perfect. Perfect response. All right. So, cradle of marriage question. So, what's it like to be married and tour with your husband? Do you have any advice? I mean, I know this is the kind of thing like couples are in bands together. That's a thing that happens. Do you have any advice on, keeping that together? Like maybe separate hats for, this is the relationship and this is the band?
Well, you have to be consistently yourself in all situations. So at all times, I am his wife and he is my husband. That doesn't mean we're flaunting it in front of everyone, but there's always this sort of grace and this deference and this extra level of patience and understanding that we know we have to give each other just because we are each other's main support in this world. I mean, actually, he's not feeling very good and he's taking a nap beside me right now, poor guy. He's but that one of the great blessings of being in a band with him is that when we are not feeling good, when one of us is having a sick day or an off day, the other person's around to kind of help take care of them, massage their feet, make them coffee. So all in all, I find it a really supportive experience to be in this lifestyle with my partner who understands exactly what I'm going through.
That makes a lot of sense. I know touring has to be so draining, and it probably can be hard to find, your average person who understands the demands on a person. And, the person who's going to understand the most is someone who does it themselves.
Exactly. Like I always say, I'm not going to date another musician. That's just not going to work out for me. And then I did it and I was like, oh, actually, this is what I needed. So
Incredible. So another question I'm really excited for, and one I'm sure you've been asked, but what is your favorite Cradle of Filth album?
Midian.
Oh, nice.
He's
Solid.
Midian is just such an amazing balance between the melody and the heaviness and the lore running through all of it. Midian was also the first Cradle album I heard, so I'm sure there's some bias there. But I especially love the keys in Midian. I think they complement what the music is doing so perfectly. And I think it was more of the key sound that we were kind of going for too on this current album as well, is having the keys be there in this wonderful melodic supportive role without overpowering everything.
I thought of that when I was listening to this too, like going back to those Midian. I think Midian was a lot of people's first Cradle of Filth album. A lot of us, that was just in high school, we all had that CD.
Oh yeah.
But it was like those keys are just so complimentary. And I was thinking of that. So that's amazing to hear you say that.
Well, I'm happy that you noticed it too, because again, that's exactly what we were going for, I think. So
Yeah, incredible. So also in my reading up on you, I read that you're a big believer in Hanlon's razor. So could you talk about why that's so important to you?
if there is something you need in navigating life in general, but especially the metal industry, it's Hanlon's razor, which is, of course, you should never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity. Um, Most people are not out to get you. Most people are not doing the wrong thing on purpose. A lot of the time, they're just ignorant and or dumb. And being dumb is not a crime. I'm even guilty of being dumb quite often, I would say. If my husband were awake, I'm sure he would say, here, here. Because that's the big thing is if you recognize that most people are not out to get you and they're not maliciously trying to mess with things, you can offer them a lot more grace and patience. So I just try to go through life saying, oh, that person probably didn't mean that in a way that hurt me. They probably just didn't know what was really going on, you know?
That's so helpful. Even like for yourself as you experience those things, I imagine, yeah, it probably helps navigate. When I was reading up on that again, I was like, this, I could see this being very crucial.
Extremely. It's also very crucial for marriage, side note. So
Excellent tip. All right, now my last question, and this was a recommendation from Lindsay. She was like, "Listen, there's this one question that a lot of us really like being asked, and we will always talk about it." And I was like, "I never would have thought of that, so I will put this to you. What is your favorite dinosaur?"
I love her.
Me
I'm
too.
I this is my moment. My moment is finally here. My favorite dinosaur has always been the Myosaurs.
We are Maya Sora Mamas. Maya, always protecting our babies.
Good mother lizard. I
Oh,
love, and we have this. They were a species of duck-billed dinosaur. They were known for living in herds and taking care of their babies as like a community group, because a lot of the fossils we found of them have been like them sheltering and protecting their nests and stuff, full of little baby dinosaurs. So I just always, I remember when I was 9 years old, I bought my first Myosaurus action figure, dinosaur action figure. I still have it. And it is like Myosaurus with like her nest full of babies. It's just really, really cute because she's like feeding them and stuff. So Myosaurus is my favorite dinosaur. Thank you for asking me that. That was amazing. I wish everyone would give me a moment to answer that.
I am so blown away because I feel like if someone asked me that, I'd be like, I don't know, but you killed it.
Thank you for that. Was go Lindsay too. I mean, I think that's a standard question for every interview.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna use it going forward, but I don't know if anybody's gonna have such a solid answer because I did not even know about the Myosaur, so thank you.
I think if you ask a lot of my bandmates, Dougal and Donnie will definitely have answers for you. If you ever interview them, throw that in there. They'll love you.
Absolutely, I'm on it. All right. Well, amazing, Zoe. That's all that I had for you. I love getting to talk to you. I really love Screaming of the Valkyries, and your performance on it is spectacular, as I know I did say in my review. But I can't wait to see what else you do next. I can't wait to hear the new Catalyst Crime, and I hope you have an amazing tour.
Thank you so much. Hey, that was a great interview. Thanks for the fun questions. I really
Oh,
appreciate
thank you.
it. See you later.
All right. Thanks so much, Zoe.
My pleasure. Bye.